A horrific incident has occurred in Hathras in Uttar Pradesh, where after a religious event, there has been a stampede that has killed more than 100 people. Now, there are varied reports as to what exactly happened and how many people have been killed, but what we know for sure so far, that there was a religious event that concluded, that gathered a large number of people, but the exit to that event was very narrow. And while the event had concluded and people were leaving the premises, there was a stampede. Now, the official number, according to PTR reports and according to government hospitals, is about 50 dead. But there are reports coming in right now from organizations like Dainik Bhaskar that peg that number at closer to 120. The Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath has expressed condolences to the families of those killed in the stampede and has instructed officials to reach the accident site and carry out relief measures immediately. The Hathras District Magistrate Ashish Kumar has said a high-level committee has been constituted to investigate whether arrangements for the event had been done properly or not. I just want to take you through some of the headlines that are coming in right now, because this is a developing story and there are different details coming in from different organizations. I'm just going to share my screen so that you can look at these headlines right now as well. For what we have right now, the updates coming in from Dainik Bhaskar, which has perhaps the only reporter who is on the ground at this point, pegging the number at 122 dead. This reporter also claims to have actually walked through the site, counting the bodies at which this number has been arrived at. There are other organizations as well, like the Amar Ujala, that have reported now 120 dead in the Hathras accident. There's this report from the Hindustan Times that says 107 dead in the stampede at the religious event. It has a visual here and it says mostly women died in that stampede. The incident took place when a religious preacher was addressing his followers at a specially laid tent in the Hathras district. According to the police, and this is in the Hindustan Times, it appears that suffocation at the venue led to discomfort among people attending the satsang. Following this, people started running, causing that stampede. It was very hot and humid during the event. Now, we understand that the satsang was held by an individual, a religious preacher called Bole Baba. And I'll come back to who this person is and why he's so popular in a minute. But we also understand from the Inspector General Aligarh that temporary permission had been granted for the gathering at that spot on Tuesday afternoon. Like I said, from what we know right now, several of the people who have died are women. This is the Times of India's report. The Times of India is still keeping it at 50 killed so far. And it says basically the 50 people died during a stampede at a religious congregation on Tuesday. 27 bodies have arrived at the hospital. Among those killed, 23 were women, 3 were children, and 1 man. I dare say that this number will have to be updated by the Times of India fairly soon, because a lot of other organizations have updated that number as well. This is the India Today that actually has eyewitness statements as to what happened when this incident took place. It basically said there's this one individual, they have spoken to this one woman who said that people were standing on the side of the road and they were pushed by the crowd that was leaving the satsang and they fell into the drain below. Now, from what we understand in this report, it said that as people were leaving, the road from the exit was very narrow and it was built on top of a drain. So it was sort of like a little bridge over a drain. And so people, one after the other, started falling over into the drain and people got crushed. It says that 25 people died on the spot. This is according to the eyewitness. Speaking to India Today, Mahesh Chandra, a member of the committee that organized the satsang, has said that the stampede happened due to the administration's inefficiency. He said that they got permission to hold the satsang, but people were buried in the mud and the crowd ran and there was no one to control them. There are visuals of the event while it was still happening and it does seem extremely crowded and extremely stuffy, even though it seemed to have been held inside a very large tent. Like I said, Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister has now expressed his condolences and instructed the members of the administration to do what is necessary. This individual that you see on your screen right now is Bole Baba, the self-styled godman whose event it was that the stampede happened. And I just want to point out that 120 dead, or even 50, as the Times of India says, is a sign that this was an event that was conducted haphazardly, that when you have such a large gathering of people, and we don't know exactly what that gathering is, but from the visuals, it seems no less than 500 to 1,000 people. There needs to be properly marked exits and entries. There need to be exits and entries that are wide enough to allow people to exit. Obviously, these will be issues that will come up when the investigation happens, if it does happen as it should. We understand this Bole Baba, according to according to India Today, is from Bahadur village, and he's from that neighborhood. He allegedly left his government job 26 years ago and began delivering religious sermons, and is extremely popular. He's not on social media, but he has programs organized every Tuesday in Aligarh, drawing thousands of devotees. He gained a lot of attention apparently during the COVID pandemic. This is Bole Baba that you see on your screen right now. It was his event, really, that this stampede took place at. Now, just pointing out to you now, normally what happens, and I'm just going to give you a very quick answer. So you can see this visual of just the number of people who had gathered at that satsang. Again, we don't have a clear number as to how many people were there and were gathered. And normally what happens is when there is a very large crowd, even if they're happening, even if they're moving, if the crowd is moving at a normal, calm space and there is no panic, but the space narrows, and from a line of 10 and 10 behind that and 10 behind that and 10 behind that, if there's space only for two people to pass, what will happen is there'll be a bottleneck. They will be pushing, and when there's pushing, the people in the front tend to lose balance, and when they fall and more people fall on top of them, that is when you have the crushing that has happened, resulting in suffocating, which is what you'll see over the next course of the next 24 hours. Most of the postmortem reports will just say suffocation, but what would have actually happened was basically becomes really difficult to breathe with that kind of pressure on top of you. So this is a terrible, terrible incident. Of course, there's been a lot of focus on Parliament right now and what's happening in Parliament, but this sort of thing is what we really should be focusing on as Indians, because it comes back to fundamentally the thing that I keep talking about, value for life, the fact that someone can organize an event with such a large gathering without adequate measures. We don't have adequate understanding of fire safety. We don't have adequate understanding of crowd control, which is what has happened here, the lack of crowd control. And invariably in our country, we move on the next day. 100 people have died, and it just almost as if nothing happened. There are regular accidents that take place, and it's just almost like we have so many people anyway that we can spare these numbers. And that is why value for life is so terrible, terribly low in India. And that is why this should be the lead story for all television channels and for all newspapers over the next 48 hours or even more, because 120 or 100 people dying in a stampede is completely unacceptable. In the meantime, let me take you through what the lead stories is right now at this point, and that's the Parliament session. Parliament has now been adjourned, and it will come back for phase two of this session, of the monsoon session, with the budget. So you'll remember that before going into election, the finance minister announced what is an interim budget, which is just a closing of accounts. Because when you're going into an election, you don't have the ability to announce new things. But now that the government has come back, that they will be announcing new things in the budget. But what we did have happen is the president spoke. We had, various members of parliament who responded to the president's speech, including Rahul Gandhi. And today the prime minister spoke in response to Rahul Gandhi as well. Some of the headlines that are coming out of that in that parliament session, and this is from the Indian Express. The prime minister began his reply in the House, thanking the president. While the opposition staged protests, they trooped into the well of the House, demanding justice for Manipur. And while the Prime Minister spoke for the better part of 2 hours about the achievements of his government, and he also pointed out the failures of the Congress party, the the opposition chanted Manipur, Manipur, we want justice continuously for the entire length of that speech. So they didn't let up at all. And this really, the mood of this parliament is very different from what we've used to seeing over the last 10 years, because obviously the opposition has decided with their substantial numbers at this point, they're going to keep the government on the mat. They're not allowing the government to set the agenda. They're not allowing the government to decide what course of business or what order of business of the day is going to be. The opposition is calling the shots at this point. For significant parts of the Lok Sabha speech, that Rahul Gandhi had made were expunged by the chair, or were removed or deleted. And Rahul Gandhi responded saying that the Prime Minister prefers to try to expunge the truth, but he cannot expunge reality. Rahul Gandhi has also written to Om Birla, the Speaker, saying removing his remarks goes against the tenets of parliamentary democracy. The Prime Minister then responding today, and we'll take a look at another article, and this one is from the Times of India, where PM Modi has said no one can silence the voice of truth as he concluded his Lok Sabha speech with the sloganeering by the opposition that I was telling you about. He did say, of course, that it was childish behavior, Balak Buddhi, he said, referring specifically to Rahul Gandhi there. Childish behavior in Lok Sabha yesterday, he said to Rahul Gandhi. And there was, of course, that question of whether or not Rahul Gandhi had insulted the entire Hindu population when he basically said that, people who call themselves Hindus are constantly going after violence instead of non-violence. Rahul Gandhi then clarified that he was referring specifically only to the Prime Minister, the BJP, and the RSS. This is the Hindu. The Hindu also talks about the fact that Rajya Sabha continues discussion on the president's address, but Lok Sabha has been adjourned. Of course, the opposition leaders were also demanding action on NEET, the role of the Election Commission. They're demanding a caste census, and the repeal of the Agniveer scheme. Interestingly, the opposition has not demanded, made any sort of demands on the new criminal laws that came into effect yesterday. That has not been raised in Parliament at all. The other story that I must point out to you, of course, today, which is really important, and this is from the NDTV website, the Pune Porsche crash. You'll remember the accused teen had been given bail by the by the Juvenile Justice Board. Now his father and his grandfather have been given bail as well. So according to this story, the court has granted bail to the father and the grandfather, a case pertaining to alleged kidnapping and wrongful confinement of the driver after that accident. Judicial magistrate has granted bail to both the builder and the grandfather who were arrested at May end. Again, you'll not see the names being used because as per the Juvenile Justice Act, we have to protect the identity of the accused as well, given that the individual is a juvenile. Now, these are the most important things that are happening in the country right now. And of course, like I said, the lead story remains the Stampede in Hathras. We will bring you more updates as and when we have them. But it really is the most horrific thing that has happened in our country right now, and should receive the attention of everyone in the country. That brings us to the end of this bulletin. Thank you for watching.